dyslexia is a 1 in 20. That's a huge portion of the population. I don't want to raise a child that views the world the same way that everyone else does. And that is a strength of a dyslexic thinker, is that you do have a different vantage point.
Hello everyone, this is Ekaterina with Trust Me Mom. Today I'm excited to welcome to the show Russ Lloyd. Russ, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Today we will talk about dyslexia and we'll share our personal stories as parents of kids with learning differences. And also I wanted to talk to Russ because he's the founder of DyslexiaCampus.com. It's a wonderful resource for all dyslexia-related news. So Russ, let's jump right in.
Yeah.
So let's first talk about probably how we met and why dyslexia is so important to you and me, why it's in our lives. We met through Provident Charter School, and it's a special school in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, that is dedicated to helping kids with learning differences. Dyslexia, dysgraphia, sometimes there are other learning challenges and differences. And both our kids had the privilege and pleasure going to that school. And I know you had some success stories as well. So would you like to just give us a little overview of your life, your family, and your personal story?
Thank you. We did. We met through Provident Charter School. That was a project that I got involved with when we learned of my oldest child, my daughter. When we learned that she was dyslexic, we went through the pains of a parent when you find out about your child and a struggle they may have, and the flailing about, right? Not knowing what to do, not knowing what resources were available, and then when you begin to, or in our case, when we began to find out what resources were available, there weren't many resources available. And I believe that is really the case still today a lot. But in our case, that was right around the time that Provident Charter School was starting. So at that time, and still, I think Provident is one of very few charter schools in the nation. At that time, that was the fourth one. There were three in Louisiana, but there were charter schools specializing in dyslexic remediation. So we were very fortunate there. And in that process, I befriended Curtis Kosman, who is the founder, and he needed help with technology for the school, which is what I do. So we began to work together in deploying his vision, his technical vision for the school. So I've been with the school in consultation capacity since its beginning. So my daughter went to the very first class. She was in I believe it was the third grade and the fourth grade, and then she tried another school for fifth grade, and I'm sorry, it'd be fifth grade. So then she came back at sixth grade, and then she went for the sixth grade again 1 year, and all during this process, she's getting better using the curriculum that Provident employs. And she felt confident that she could keep up with her peers and with her classwork. And she wanted to go into her home district to be more prepared to the transition for middle school. So she did that in the seventh grade. And she was indeed up to speed with her peers. So that was part of my story for Provident. Yeah, tell me about yours. Now you moved specifically for this school from an area that didn't have a resource. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, they had resources, but it was very expensive, about $40,000 a year. So that's what we learned as my daughter was diagnosed pretty early. I believe it was at the end of kindergarten. So her teacher saw the signs early on, and we hired 2 psychologists. We did independent testing, and then she went to a really wonderful, highly acclaimed public school for first grade, and she was doing her best. She had tutors every single day. So 5 days a week after school, I took her to either Kumon, private tutors for reading, occupational therapy, how to manage emotions. So what I want to share with parents and people who are watching the program is if your child has a learning difference, and I don't want to call it a disability because sometimes it's a super ability. Sometimes your kids will be able to zoom out and see a big picture. They will overcompensate somewhere else. And it's a difference in neurological wiring, how they perceive and decode information. But in our case, typical public school is not set up to teach kids with dyslexia or dysgraphia or any other differences in perceiving information. And my daughter was working really hard, but she felt that she's getting behind. And what I also learned, and probably you encountered that as well, writing could be not as refined as you would expect. In fact, did you have a chance to go to a dyslexia simulation program at Provident?
I've seen parts of it, but I think you've seen the entire thing, and I've seen parts of it, but it is amazing and something that everyone, if they have the opportunity, should do.
Right. Yes, it was really eye-opening, and it was fascinating to see other parents who got their kids, they understood, because I had no problems learning. I learned to read at age 5. And also my husband, so we both have advanced college degrees. It was pretty easy for us. And I know in many cases it could be a genetic predisposition with dyslexia in kids, but perhaps it was somewhere with our remote relatives, not immediate spouses. And we just couldn't relate. We couldn't understand why our child is struggling with reading and writing. And dyslexia simulation gives you a true taste of what it feels to be that person who cannot decode. Or we were given, so if I'm a right-handed person, we were given a pencil in our left hand and plus reverse mirror, and we had to copy some symbols. So it was very hard. After 2 hours, we were really tired. And teacher said, your children are doing it 7 hours a day, 5 times a week. Imagine how tired they are. So let's go back to your story and your daughter.
Go ahead.
It's fascinating that she was the first student at school.
Well, she was the first class. First class.
In the first class. But did you feel you're taking a risk because it's a new school, kind of experimental program almost?
I don't know that, looking back on it, I don't think that we were taking a risk. The resources weren't there. And in a financial situation where you can't afford the expensive alternatives, which are constant tutoring, which is further exhausting an already exhausted student, or a private education, we had no option, right? The public schools they still aren't to a lot of degree. But they were not able to, they weren't able to handle that load. It was something that it seemed like to us that they clearly didn't want to do. So we didn't really blink at it. And, we met everyone. We met, the CEO, Maria, at that time. She was the director of education, and, there were some other people in the CEO role, and they were all fantastic. And, we were willing, and she was, and she immediately resonated with it, in that, mostly from her own words, she said that it felt more comfortable because she was with people that were like her, right? That were like her, and so she met a lot of friends, which she still has to this day, and so that's important, right? You mentioned before it's talked a lot about as a disability, but it is far from a disability. It's quite the opposite, in my opinion. It is a strength, and I think that as we get to talking in this conversation, we can go over some of the examples of that. But That's what Provident did. And they talked about it. I mean, it's in the language. You know, when you meet somebody new and they use the language that you resonate with, you know, you can't help but be optimistic. And Provident knows and knew all of the things. They knew everything. All the struggles we were having, they knew it. You know, and
Right.
so it was easy to give them a shot.
Yes. Oh, that's great, because we obviously made that decision a few years down the road. You know, you guys were the pioneers, and we indeed moved to a different state for the school. And we met people on the plane who were
Wow.
Provident parents, and everybody just raved about it. Everybody said how wonderful it was. So my daughter just started the school. So she started in August, and we're recording in November. So it's been only a few months, but I already see her desire to read and write.
Mm.
Now I'm picking her up from school and she's trying to read the signs. Before it was impossible to, like, you have to almost force her to read. And now she naturally feels that confidence and desire to learn and to express herself, which is a big shift, self-esteem
Yes.
for other kids. Did you experience difficulty in the typical public school where your child felt, oh, well, I'm not as good as others, or something must be wrong with me? Were there thoughts like that where she felt less than others because of the way she learned?
I don't know if it was less. I mean, when you're in the second and third grade, it is, you know, the work is a little bit more average, say, or at least in America is average. So that, the people who will stand out are the people who can't do it. And she wasn't falling into that category. So I'm saying that, like, if a student was just alarmingly slow at doing math or something, I will say that her reading teacher did recognize that something was up, you know, and brought it to our attention, and we began to read about it. And I think I remember saying, what if she's dyslexic, right? I didn't really even know what that meant. I was just
Mm-hmm.
being, I thought it was like flipping, like reversing words, the character, the typical explanation, which is not accurate. But then we had the neuropsych and everything. So I would say this in regards to how she felt is that in hindsight, you know, when she was diagnosed as dyslexic, that her own, it's like self-esteem, but as humans, we create narratives about ourselves, right? Everybody does
Right.
it. And it's generally defined at an early age, a lot of times. And she did that. And she did that in a way that was, I just don't like to read. I don't like to
Mm-hmm.
read. I'm not good at reading. And so she still holds on to that pretty strongly at 16. Um, and that's her choice. She does great in school and she powers through and she gets all of her work done. So there's nothing to really complain about. As a parent, I would love for her to, you know, not use that language about herself. But I would say that in regards to your question, that was something that she picked up early, defined herself as, and has, you know, stubbornly held it close to her heart as a true trait, if you will. But not with her peers. Her peers were, she had a lot of friends at school and didn't feel like she was really like standing out as, you know, inferior in any way.
Mm-hmm. In our case, one of my daughter's best friends was exceptionally good at
Mm.
writing. I think that child's writing was better than most adults' writing. It was, that girl was off the charts, super talented, amazing, but the stark difference between their writing styles and comprehension and reading was so big that already at first grade there was that kind of confusion about why can't I do it as well as
Yeah.
this other child. And I see how, at least from conversations with other parents and even school psychologists, counselors, I see how if it's not addressed, dyslexia or anything else that may get in the way of learning for the child, self-esteem gets such a big hit down the road where a child is labeled stupid. I remember Jennifer Aniston, famous actress, she was telling how she had dyslexia. She didn't know that. And she said, I thought I was stupid. And now, obviously, she's a very successful person, but there has to be a way to address how people learn. And in our case, Provident is doing a fantastic job. I know they have a lot of teachers who are certified in Wilson method, and they get that instruction, Wilson reading, once a day, 5 times a week, which is really important. Even math is taught in a different way. Do you have more insight? Because obviously I saw some information, but maybe you saw, at first the first couple of years, kids do not get homework because they do all the work at school. That was a big benefit as well, because their day is a bit longer. So it's about 8 hours at our school versus 7 or less at public schools. But then they do so-called homework at school with the help of teachers. And I also,
No, please go ahead.
But then your child probably started bringing homework. Was it 4th grade or 5th grade? At what age?
At Provident, they didn't have homework. It's across the board.
Okay. Maybe they introduced it now.
They may have changed that now, but
yes.
At that time they did not.
Okay. So do you remember the journey of your daughter from, I guess, gaining confidence in reading? How did she catch up with the skills she needed for learning?
Well, it was the remediation at Provident. It being for those of you that are not, for those listeners that are not aware of what Wilson or Orton Gillingham would be, right, as a remediation tactic, but it's a very tactile. They use a lot. It's very tactile. So you're decoding words and with rhythm and with tactile, and that's a generalized explanation of what it is. It's very precise, and the teachers are trained extensively in it. So, kudos to Provident and all the teachers for doing the hard work to do that. Her journey was, but it was just that, once she got confident and learned the basics, she's a self-starter. So she just took off and kept going. That's really it. There was nothing that she did anything that was any different other than having to go to that school.
Right. So basically follow the instruction at school.
Yeah. And it goes for anybody doing a tutor. Like we've had a lot of conversations at Provident about, with COVID, it wasn't a raging success when we had to go into remote learning. And we spun up remote learning very fast, and we are very technology heavy. So we have 1-to-1 devices, and sometimes at that time we had 2-to-1 devices. So everybody had a school device and everybody had a home device. But I'm not saying it didn't translate, but I think that I'm not one to speak to this, but the administrators can speak to it more precisely though. But it was a moderate success. Like we were able to maintain the curve, but not do exceptional gains that they were used to, right? Seeing in a student's ability. So that was something that let me try to say the technology, the tools that we employ in technology is a big part of what can assist anyone at any age to easier read and write on the computer. So she really embraced that and has learned a lot about that. That has helped her, along with her IEP, which, at Provident, in any given school district or school, that there'll be a small percentage of students that have an IEP, but at Provident, everybody has an IEP.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned that you could potentially share a few success stories or those superpowers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, please brag on your daughter.
I've got a lot of them. Are you talking about in general, like as successful dyslexic people, or are you talking about
No,
my daughter in general?
your daughter, where
My
you
daughter.
saw her superpowers.
She came into that recently, as is the case with a lot of dyslexic learners. They're very creative, right? And go back to tactile. She is very creative, extremely creative, and has recently gotten into pottery and throwing on the wheel, right? Which is tactile. It makes
Hmm.
perfect sense. Um,
Right.
but she's extremely talented at it and has gotten a lot of accolades from her teachers, and she's really embraced that. So, and that took a long time. That took her. That was she's in the 10th grade, so that was in the ninth grade. That long to really find the thing that she really, really loved to do. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying it will hold, but it's always fun to see your child resonate with something, whatever it is.
Right, right. And also, I noticed that I'm sure every program at Provident is well thought out of, such as martial arts programs.
Mm.
When I spoke with psychologists, they said they typically recommend martial arts, taekwondo, any other martial arts to kids with dyslexia or in general, any of the differences where they need to see quick successes and wins. And there's something about how your brain works when you do martial arts routine and the system of celebrating small steps. It's easy and you can quickly see how you gain new skills, and it's easy to gauge.
Mm.
And kids can learn to coordinate themselves as well as listen to instruction well. And my daughter loves our taekwondo. At first, she had some concerns because she never tried martial arts, and now it's her favorite days when she has taekwondo. Same, they also have makerspace, a lot of hands-on classes where they can print in 3D printing or create some cool magnets, use different tools, a lot of crafty spaces as well as I believe they even have some graphic design
Hmm.
programs.
It's
So a
part of
lot
3D
of
design, yeah.
yes, 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 and music. So I'm really grateful that the school provides a lot of artistic opportunities as well as something that is actually hands-on.
Yes. Taekwondo, I think Provident is the only school in the nation that has Taekwondo as a nation. I believe that's true. And the makerspace is unlike anything I've ever seen. It well surpasses any makerspace that she has drills. It's woodworking. They're building stuff, and
Right.
they do some coding. They have some robots that they code. An activity 3D design requires design. They do light coding of some sort. I'm not exactly sure which program that is. Amrit would be a fantastic. She's the teacher. She'd be a fantastic guest read. She's well
Yeah.
versed in all of this. But Master Zhang has been there from the beginning for the Taekwondo, and my daughter as well loved it. Loved it. She
Yes.
thought she could kick anybody's butt, but she still does. Just based on that small time at Provident.
Right,
But
right, right.
there is something about the rhythm and the tactile, and
Mhm.
you're right about the brain. And that was the brilliant idea of Mr. Kosman, who founded the school. He was insistent on that, and that was a big part of its launch.
Can you tell more about the founder? Because he has a fascinating story and why he decided to found the school.
I can tell you what I know. He's a fantastic man, very successful businessman in Pittsburgh, um, and he is in the commercial real estate, among other things. But I think he made a lot of success there. He went to Carnegie Mellon, and he struggled, I believe, as he would say, all through his schooling, and figured out a way, as many dyslexics do, and of that age too. I'm not sure of his actual age, nor would I say it, but he we're still catching up to the diagnoses, right? So
Hmm.
my parents, for example, my dad is probably dyslexic. I don't know if he would tell you that, but that'd be my educated guess. But that there was just nothing for them, right? So Mr. Kosman worked really hard and made his way through school and made his way through Carnegie Mellon, which is an extremely prestigious institution here in Pittsburgh, and went on to have a successful business. And in that success, his son was dyslexic, is dyslexic as well, and so he went to one of the private schools, and Mr. Kosman was passionate about this, that not was passionate about leveling the playing field, trying to create the solution for meeting the greatest need. Right? There's a lot of underserved population in the world anywhere, and they can't afford to go to. We couldn't afford to go to private school, right? So this was his answer, was to create a foundation and go through the hard work. I think it was at least 5 years, if not more, that they had to petition the Pennsylvania legislature to get Provident launched. And him being in the commercial real estate business, he was able to procure a building from the Catholic diocese, and which is where Providence stands now. And he just opened his second school.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I'm sure he has plans to open many more around the region. So
Yes, and that would be wonderful. Our kids are very lucky to be in the school designed for 1,000 students, and it's over 300 students right now. So they definitely have a lot of space and very small class sizes, which is
yes, a
also
lot of
very
teachers.
important.
Yes,
Yes, lots of teachers, high ratio. So basically, the ratio teacher to a student is something 1 to 6, maybe, or
somewhere in
one.
there. Yeah,
Yeah,
anything
yes.
lower than 1 to 20 would be almost remarkable, I think, in this day and time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Teachers work really hard, and all of these children have IEPs, and with dyslexia, you usually have what they call well, I'm not going to say it correctly, but you usually have some sort of other neurodivergent, um,
Condition like ADHD,
yeah,
right?
right,
Yeah.
or autism is in there too. So if you imagine like sort of three circles overlapping, and somewhere you fall in the spectrum, like you're heavy over here, or light over there. My daughter, we realized later in life that she's a little bit on the autistic. She would test and test as an autistic person, but she's not really. She doesn't act like a classic autistic person, but she just has some of those things. So back to Provident, all of these children have these. They require special attention, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that at 1 to 20. So
Right.
they do a great job of having teams and having support, um, and taking care of the kids. I mean, they really care about those kids, about their
Yes.
well-being, and helping them make the environment that helps them learn best.
Right. In fact, I met one of the teachers who earned a PhD in education, special ed, and she had dyslexia, and she shared her story how it was so hard for her to even finish high school, then go to college, and earning a PhD was a feat. It was literally that hard, and she felt she proved it to herself and her family she can do it. But she also understands the kids. She understands how to connect with them, what they are going through, which is very important versus, oh, you don't get it. Right. So
Right.
basically, yeah. And I also want to point out, it's not like a gathering of some rowdy, crazy kids. They look like normal, typical
Oh, very
kids.
much. Yeah.
Yes, they just have more fun, engaging instruction methods where kids can focus better.
Yeah.
And I also noticed they have lots of breaks because I'm sure there's science behind how long you have to focus on a task before you take a break, do some kind of a physical activity. They have those brain breaks. Do you remember anything?
I don't remember. I'm not privy to the schedule as much, given what I do to help. But I know that what you're speaking of is true. And, again, back to what you said earlier, they're working overtime. So
Yes.
yeah, break. give it a break and decompress and move your body, right? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more, since you have more than one child, right? How was it different? Did you see, I don't have a reference point. I only have one child. And for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know parenting is so hard. So for you, how was that journey seeing probably, of course, each child has their own personality and character and strengths and weaknesses, but just learning style, what was the most difficult part with the kid who had dyslexia for you as a
Well,
parent?
she was first, so, that was, I guess I mean, that's just unique to me, but she was first. So, with your first child, you're trying really hard. You're hyper protective almost in our case, that she, really wasn't super apparent until someone sort of brought it up. And then it was like, oh, okay, huh. And, so as regards to it was different, I think having gone through her first, it was very apparent that, so she's the oldest and she has two smaller brothers. And then when we got to the boys, they it was very clear that they weren't, they didn't have that. Like they just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain this to tell the difference, but it was, you know, especially the youngest one. I just had a teacher conference, recently, and,
Mm-hmm.
he was off the charts. So,
Yeah.
in the good way. So
Right, right,
I
right.
don't know what, we didn't do anything different. I don't think. It's just
Mm-hmm.
makeup, and, but I don't know that there was anything different I could say, because she was first. So I didn't have any frame of reference.
Yeah. So now with your experiences and having a few children, what advice can you give to parents who have maybe 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, where they begin noticing that, wait, my child, like Johnny, Mary, everybody else is learning quickly and everybody gets the same instruction and my child is not catching up. I either have to, like some parents go into this, you need to work harder. And
Yeah.
it's usually not helpful. It's there's a different method of learning, but what can you recommend to them, maybe to identify what's going on with the child? How can they support a child? What could you do if you're in that position with your experience right now?
Uh, so everybody learns differently. All 8 billion of us, right? Every single person. If you find that you're concerned about, that, about a learning style, let's say if it shows up now, I would look at it as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I do. And I'm trying to flip the narrative for her, but, this is not the end of the world. And because your district, or if you start going down that path, depending on where you are in the process, at 5, second grade, fifth grade, wherever it is you are in the process that this comes to light, don't panic. It's dyslexia is coming to light. It's coming to light as we speak. That's something that I've been watching over the last, couple of years, which we can talk about. But it is coming. It's really coming out that, neurodivergent learners and neurodiversity is prevalent, and I really think that it should be just a blanket statement. If everybody's neurodivergent, it's just we're not. We learn differently. We all learn differently, and, the American system, at least, that was made at a time when you were trying to make factory workers, right? So we're not factory workers anymore. That system
Right.
doesn't really apply. So the system hasn't really caught up. So, you're in this process of worrying, fretting, oh my God, my child's not going to meet the standards, whatever. Um, Breathe, and you will find the resources because they're coming available. So that would be my suggestion, that, there are a lot more resources now than there were even 5 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly more than 10 and 20 and 50 years ago. Dyslexia is a 1 in 20. That's a huge portion of the population. One in
Right.
five. 1 in 5 is 20%. That's the conservative number. There are some people who say it's more than that. That's a big portion of the population. Uh,
Yes.
and I will go back to the original thing that I said, which is to not panic and not think it's a problem, because it's not a problem. It's an advantage. And it's my personal opinion that I don't want to raise a child that views the world the same way that everyone else does. And that is the strength of a dyslexic thinker, is that you do have a different vantage point. You are able to see systems as a whole. You may not be able to see the minutia of the letters, and they may not line up. You may not read correctly, but technology it already has many, many tools that are available to help them at any stage, second grade, senior in high school, college. They're all there. And whether they have an IEP or not, the main thing I wanted to teach my children is for them to come out of school with a love of learning, that they know how to, they want to learn something, and they know how to go about finding out more about that. So looking back on it, that's my perspective.
That's great. What about those tools that you mentioned? Are you talking about maybe reading out loud technology, all the
Yeah.
software programs? Yeah.
Text to speech, speech to text. There are a lot of those even just embedded within the operating systems now. AI is already a game changer for a lot of writing. That's just getting started.
Right.
The way that it's going to assist in neurodivergent learning, it's really going to be profound. It already is, but it's going to even get better. There are a lot of people making a lot of cool apps and use cases for AI with regard to dyslexia. So I'm a part of a project called DyslexiaCampus.com. That's a website, and it's a resource. It's a news resource. So in there, we are gathering all up-to-date information as it comes out on a weekly and daily basis about technology for dyslexia related things. So anything that comes out that is a new feature or a new invention. In Pittsburgh, we have something called Luca AI, LUCA.ai, and he's a father of a dyslexic student who has made an AI sort of phonemic awareness tool where the AI will be able to hear the student read and see and determine which areas of phonetics they have a problem with, and then reiterate a curriculum or have them start reading a story that hyper puts awareness on that particular phonetic problem, which is amazing. He just launched the other day. He's been working on it for 2 years with Carnegie Mellon. So things like that. We're really, really have a lot of tools available to us just as individuals. And I believe that will outpace anything that the districts are going to do. But on
Yes.
Dyslexia Campus, we're keeping up with all the legislation across the country too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's helpful. So what other examples can you give us from this fun cutting edge news besides technology, legislation? Is there anything about celebrities?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
share it there.
Well, that's important. Again, back to what we were talking about with a young person being able to see it as a superpower. Okay. So, and generally, there are a lot of dyslexic success stories. There's something like 30% of all multimillionaires are dyslexic, which is disproportionate for the 20% of the population, right? Which is a small subset of people, and 30% of those are dyslexic, right? Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, like the man who invented the lithium battery, Henry Ford, he invented the manufacturing line. I mean, these are massive, massive contributions to society, right? That were made by dyslexic uh, learners. So, with that said, young people today, for example, John Lennon is dyslexic, but you know what?
Hmm.
A lot of young people don't know who John Lennon is. As sad as that may be, they don't know who he is. But they do know who JoJo Siwa is, or they do know who Kanye West's daughter is, or Kim Kardashian's daughter, right? They know who that. They know who that is. They know who Captain America is, or they know the actor, right? So those are being able to show a young person somebody like themselves that's succeeding that they know, that's not just some white guy from the past, is pretty important, I think.
Right, definitely. So, and they can find all those cool
Oh
resources
yeah.
on dyslexiacampus.com.
Yeah, yeah. And John, and the other one I learned today was Mark Ruffalo, the actor.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in the Avengers, there's Mark Ruffalo. There's the actor who plays Falcon. I don't know his name right off the top of the head. And there's one of the female actors that is in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's one other one. So like four of the Avengers are
Hmm.
dyslexic, right? So
That's
um,
fascinating.
you do see a disproportionate amount of actors, creative outlets, a lot of actors that couldn't
Right.
read, right? But yeah, we have a lot of celebrity news, we have a lot of medical news. So like any research papers that are coming out regarding genetic, trying to map the gene for that is associated with the eye alignment, and technology and business. There's a big call for businesses and websites, for example, to design for neurodiversity.
Dyslex. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and dyslexia. But so that's a you can just see right there. Like before, we weren't even using the word dyslexia, and now we're having businesses formulate design around 20% of the population. Because
That's very.
I think what they see is that a common thing that I hear is that what works for dyslexic students works in general. So like anybody with rhythm and tactile, it just helps the memory, right? So those things are good
Right.
for the general population. So there's a push in education very slowly, but it is moving. Some states faster than others.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good to know. So, is there anything else that you wanted to cover today?
No, I'm so excited that you had me on, and this is such an important conversation, and especially for moms and parents that are just starting this process. For those of us who have gone through it, if
Right.
we can share what we know, share what we've learned, and make it and calm the waters, and just say that
Mhm.
it is going to be okay. There's nothing wrong with your child. And in fact, you're blessed to have such a unique individual that has a powerful perspective on the world that is going to be beneficial. And so maybe for me, I want to change. I want to just empower them to know that about themselves. I want all that, and adults as well, right? A lot of adults who got skipped through the system, didn't get caught by the system, and we want to circle back with them and teach them how to use the technology tools, things that can help them. So just so happy that you're doing this, and that this is further resource for parents and the world at large.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Russ.
Yes.